Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Clockedin with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Clockedin with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today. We have Michael Lynn. He's the CFO of Pray.com. Yes, Pray.com. I don't know how they got that. And he's also a marathon runner. Michael, how are we doing today?
I'm living the dream.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you on here because you represent somebody who is lived a life, did some incredible things, but also has made jumps and turns and just figured it out. So, Michael, where does your story start? Where did your journey begin?
It starts in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So everyone probably knows Green Bay if they watch the NFL. It's the Packers, home of the Packers. I can assure you that's the highlight of Green Bay. It's a very small blue collar town, really great people. But that's where it started. And I was raised Catholic in Green Bay. It's a very Catholic community. And when I was growing up, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. My father worked in a paper mill for 49 years. So wow. we literally opened the same door to go to work for 49 years straight. Like they haven't changed the door in 49 years. And
goodness.
When you watch your father just grind like that so hard, it just shapes you as a person, shapes your work ethic for sure. And so, that's how I grew up. I grew up, in a very blue collar family with really great, loving parents. And, I was the first person in my family to go to college out of high school and actually graduate. So, going off, I actually went to Wisconsin and doing that was like a big step for us in my family.
And I could imagine because most people don't realize it, but like your family and the people and like your parents and their attitude, it's usually a representation of what your future life, like your life is probably going to be a tad higher just because the kids are always a little bit higher, but it's usually in a similar work ethic and a similar field that they're in. So was there any pressure as a child to like kind of join that path? Or they really wanted the college experience?
Total opposite. It was super interesting. My father had always told me like, you should be a lawyer. You should be what they called back then a stockbroker. You can't use that term anymore. But he always encouraged me to do something else. And what was really interesting is when I was at Wisconsin, my freshman year, I needed a job. So I went back to Green Bay, and my father had encouraged me to work at the paper mill he worked at. And the reason he did that is because he wanted to make sure I never came back. He wanted me to feel what it felt like to work in a paper mill. And so I did it, for 3 months. And, it was grueling. I worked 12-hour swing shifts. And what a swing shift is that you work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., like 3 days in a row. Then you have a day or two off. And then you work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3 more days.
Oh my God.
So that's why they call it a swing shift, because they're swinging your times from flipping the times of the day. And that was a normal thing. That was a normal thing for those people. And, working in a paper mill, it's a dangerous thing. It's very hot. The hours are long. You're wearing steel toe boots and, nobody complains. And that's what you do. And he did that on purpose. He's like, I wanted you to come back. And he told me this afterwards, by the way. He didn't tell me beforehand. But after I did it for a summer, he's like, I did that on purpose. I wanted to make sure you never come back here. And I was like, wow, like, thank you for that. And, it gives me another reason to like make sure I graduated, right? If I didn't have my own personal like want and will to do it, he knew that, adding that additional like, don't fail. You don't want to be back here. And I was like, wow, okay, got it.
Wow, I got chills. I
Pretty
like got
cool.
chills for that. Yeah, that's incredible. And so for you, what you're off to college and what are you like? I mean, obviously, we know when you get to college, there's so many different opportunities, there's so many places, and it's like, how do I even make a decision?
Yeah. And for me, I thought it would be like a marketing major was like my plan. Like, I don't know why it came to me, but I was like, I feel like I'd be good at marketing. Let me give that a shot. And so I started taking classes in marketing. And I think that was my plan. I was like, let me be in marketing, and maybe that's a natural fit for me. And I'll just take a bunch of courses, and maybe I'll go do some marketing firm. But while I was there, my parents ended up getting divorced.
Oh, wow.
And that actually changed the path and actually changed my major. If you give me a second, I'll tell you why. But in a divorce, there's a separation of assets, right? So there's a divorce decree and there's a settlement. And, we didn't have a lot of money as it was for there to be a settlement, but there was.
Yeah.
And my mom, she's a homemaker. It's not like she's a financial professional. And so she took her portion of the settlement and went to a financial advisor with that portion of the settlement, who ended up swindling her out of a bunch of money.
No way.
And, it was just devastating because one, I didn't know much about money in the first place, didn't grow up with it, had no reason to know about it. Two, my poor mom, she went to somebody that's supposed to be professional, and the person cared more about themselves than, helping my mom. And so, my marketing plans were out the window after that happened to my mom. I said, that's it. I'm changing my major to finance. I need to learn what this is to make sure that never happens to my mom or my family or my friends ever again. And that was the change in my direction of my life, because I spent 13 years at Merrill Lynch after that. And it was managing people's money and making sure that would never happen to anyone that I got interacted with. And so the good news of that story, though, Jordan, is my mom's all taken care of. So like, she's in a good spot. She lives in Green Bay. Like, she's not hurting for cash. But it was certainly a challenging time when that took place.
Yeah, I appreciate the vulnerability and sharing, because we don't talk about that stuff, about knowing the financials. It's your dad was working, your mom's working, everyone thinks there's enough money. It's like, we're saving, we're doing something. But then at the end, you have to realize that I have to manage this, or I have to trust somebody else. And if I trust but I don't know anyone in the financial industry, so how could I know? It's the random guy at the bank. And yeah, no, it's a very scary predicament. So I applaud you for what you did and how you took action and really turned to a purpose-driven career. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. And I think there's a component that I now have this skill set for the rest of my life. So like, I can, in any investment, I feel just like more empowered to know if it makes sense or it doesn't make sense, just based on managing money for so long. It's like, this is a pretty special skill set. More people should be, financially aware of, where their money is going. And, the meme stocks are fun and, it's exciting to talk about, but it's not a real plan.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And with the people, they need to understand that there's like dollar cost averaging and putting money in the S&P 500 and to someone who's seen a lot of finance, they feel like, oh, it's so repetitive, it's so boring. And it's like, where's the excitement? And it's like,
boring is good.
It's good.
You want
boring is very good. You want boring.
If there's too much excitement, that means there's also a lot of risk. So you have to be careful.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, financial literacy, and anyone can look this up pretty easily, where it's just how to manage finances, how to do this. And there's a lot of information on that. So we're definitely not going to dive into that. But so you start your career at Merrill and you're doing well. Was that fulfilling feeling, or were you getting an itch for more?
Yeah. So, there's something exciting about managing millions of dollars in wealth, of people's individual wealth, and being around and being around those people. I mean, these are very successful people, have saved up incredible amounts of money. And so you get to be part of their, ecosystem. You get to go to their house, go to their events, you host events for these people. And all of a sudden you're in the luxury boxes. You're doing, steak dinners and lobster dinners all the time. You're having special events where, you're closing down museums and all these like fancy places just for your clients. And, as somebody that didn't come from a lot of money, I thought that was the dream. Like now I get to do all these incredible things. Now I didn't necessarily have the wealth of my clients, right? I'm managing their wealth. And it does take a long time, even as a financial advisor, to earn enough money to even be as large as your clients. And so, that was a thing that was as interesting, like for me, was I'm managing other people's money, but it would take me a very long time to even, achieve their wealth. And the other component was like, I get to do all this stuff I thought was like super fun and cool. And, that none of my friends were doing at the time in their 20s or, early 30s. But there's a point where you actually understand financial management where it becomes repetitive. And,
really?
There's only so many asset allocation models. There's only so many types of investment where you're like, I actually understand the risk associated with this investment, and I know how to apply it based on your age and your expectations of your retirement, et cetera, where you actually get to a point where like, I am learning new things every year, but it's not exponential learning. Like it, at some point you go, I pretty much know how to manage money in pretty much every market. So where is my next step? Like, where's my next evolution? And so, it was 2008. And
before you make that jump, I just want to make sure the audience realizes how incredible it is that Michael's going not on an earning progression or a client progression, but on a learning progression. Because a lot of people base their careers and they might base their ideas off of, oh, I've hit a VP level or an SVP level, or I did this, or I got this promotion, and that should satisfy them. But you were actually gauging them on the learning. And I think that's pretty awesome, because there's not too many people that are doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, for me, learning is exciting, and trying new things is different and exciting. I get very bored with repetitive motions, which is probably why I wouldn't work in a paper mill, because there's only certain things that you do and then you don't do anything else. Like there's nothing else to learn. But, I think the component of learning is like, when you first started at Merrill Lynch, and this was back in 2004, when I first had an internship, they actually had a live streaming video on our desktops back then of Bloomberg. And so, you hear these stories, how people can just watch, another language on TV and they can learn it. Like, oh, I moved to this country and I was watching like Spanish television. All of a sudden I know Spanish. And you're like, is that really true? That can actually happen. And you hear that very often, right? The same thing happens when you watch financial, like you watch enough Bloomberg every single day for years. Like when you first start, you're like, what are they even talking about? I have no idea what's going on. Like, this is wild. Like, will I ever possibly learn what they're talking about? And then there's at a point where something just turns over and you're like, wait a minute, I literally know everything that they're saying. Like there is nothing necessarily like shocking or that I don't understand, at least. Like, yes, markets change and all sorts of businesses come up and there's different models and it's an exciting business. But there is a point where you go, I actually know what you're talking about. I understand how the markets work. I understand all these special terms like dead cat bounce, which nobody, like, what does that actually mean? And, or triple witching, like, what is that? I didn't know what that was for years. And then I figured it out from watching this stuff. And I think there is a point though, where you reach an apex of learning where you're like, okay, like, am I learning at a fast enough rate that I feel passionate about what I'm doing? And I started losing that, and I knew that something had to change.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think what ends up happening is when you made that transition, it was like you were heading into your 30s, everyone's like, you got to figure it out. This is the earning time. This is when we get married. This is when we get a house. And the piling up of expenses causes people to sit in these roles where they're just not happy. So you see this coming. What's your strategy?
So, it was interesting because part of it was I was getting kind of just complacent, and I was like, I got to do something else. What am I going to do? And I just, I was watching Shark Tank of all things. And I was like, wow, wouldn't that be cool to have like a business idea where you to like be super passionate about something and you put all your energy and effort and like this random contraption or idea that you created, and you're like, go for broke on all of it. Like that seems pretty exciting. And I would watch Shark Tank, and after a while, I started getting like super jealous, Jordan. Like I literally couldn't watch anymore because I was so jealous of these entrepreneurs that they had figured out an idea that was an original idea that like people got excited about. And I was like, wow, what if I could do that? Like I don't really have an idea in my head right now, but like that would be something I could get really excited about. And so I said, well, how do I do that if I don't have an idea? Like, what's my first step? And in my head, because, I thought everything could be learned in college, I said, well, I should go get a graduate degree in entrepreneurship. Like that makes sense. Why don't I just go, pay a bunch of money and go to an entrepreneurship, MBA program. And then maybe I'll learn about how to run a company, and like that'll happen. And I'll just come up with an idea while I'm at school. It'll just come to me. So that's what I did. I went to the University of Southern California in 2008 in their MBA program, and they had an entrepreneurship concentration. It was the number 2 part-time program in the country. And so, it was like, hey, they're really good at this. And it's warm weather. I'm kind of getting sick of freezing in Green Bay. Like I'm going to move to LA, even though I've been here on a vacation, like when I was like 8 years old. Like I didn't really know much about this place. I had not visited the college, so I didn't know what I was actually getting into. But I thought that was the path for me. I was like, all right, this will come when I go there. Now, just fast forwarding really quick, don't go to college for entrepreneurship. Like it's kind of, if you really want to learn fast, just get into it. Like that's the fastest way. I did learn a ton of stuff, no doubt about it. And I am here today because I happened to go to an event that was for USC students that were entrepreneurs. And that's how, where I am today started. But I would say in general, if you really want to be an entrepreneur, like you just got to dive in, and you got to dive in quickly, and you're going to make a ton of mistakes, and that's okay. But you do not have to go to college for it. That's for sure. Very expensive.
I would agree with you that the most important attribute of what you said, of going to college or getting an MBA or doing anything for entrepreneurship, is really the networking that the school provides, because that's the area where you can actually meet people and make a difference and make that jump. But yeah, I mean, the amount of people, granted today it's kind of dying down where it's not like you have to go to college. It's like, there's a lot of alternatives.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And the ecosystem that are now built around, work, co-working spaces, and there's just a lot more ecosystem for entrepreneurs, I think, especially in the tech space. Silicon Valley has expanded around the world, and you had to live in Silicon Valley to be part of that ecosystem. You don't have to live there anymore. And because all these places now have, their own ecosystems, and, that's all around the world now. But to your point, Jordan, it is about networking. It is about being around people that think the same way as you, or maybe they think totally different. And that's what you need. And that's what you need. You need to be around people that are like, whoa, these people are wild. Like people don't talk this way. I actually need to be around these people so I can learn.
Yeah. And that's the same concept you talked about earlier, where you're like, I don't understand what they're talking about, because maybe maybe you're sitting there in your friend group, and this is just for the listeners. They might be like, oh, like I'm thinking about buying a house for myself to live in. Well, you have another friend who's like, oh, I want to get a rental property. I don't need to live in a home. I need a rental property. Like it's a completely different approach, and it's a different thought wave. And when you get around these people, it's good to learn, because not just in the real estate game, but in the entrepreneurship, because you start hearing about their ideas and what they're doing and how they're dealing with employees and how they're growing their network. And it's just, it can be very incredible stuff.
It's that mind shift. And until you're exposed to it, you're still in this ecosystem that you've built around the people that you hang out with, which was an interesting thing, because the first day at USC in their MBA program, they said, look around you. You are not like everybody else in America. These are the people that you're around right now. You guys are building your own ecosystem and you're in your own echo chamber. So like, you can't build products just for the people in this room. Like, these aren't customers necessarily, unless you're building for like MBA students. But like, sometimes you insulate with people that are like you. And so you become kind of this cohesive, like, oh, everyone thinks the same way. Well, yeah, because you're friends with them. And now all of a sudden you don't really expand your mindset or your worldview, because you're always around the same people. And that really came into fruition when I heard that from this professor. Is like, this is an ecosystem that is very small. And so if you only surround yourself with people in this room, you're going to miss everything else that's going around, which is why like an entrepreneurship group, which is, you go to some of these conferences and stuff, these people are all over the place, all different businesses, all different backgrounds. Like, those are the most fun things to go to, because you have a bunch of wild characters who just think completely different than you. And you that's where you can learn the most.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. And one of the best things is getting that new perspective, or providing that perspective of, hey, I had this experience, now I have this experience, and it's all your experience stacked up. And if you really want to understand it, like, essentially what you explained to me is why, one of the main reasons I do the podcast, because I get to meet incredible people like yourself, and it allows my ecosystem to just continue to expand and be like, I know this guy, I know this guy. And I just think the listeners just need to find a place, because in reality, a lot of us hang out with the same 5 friends. Hey, it's Friday night, we're grabbing a beer, we're going to go over to Mike's house. Like, that's just what we're doing.
Yep.
And it's, how do you find that different group? How do you expand? How do you go into these different areas? I think that's something that we can all ask ourselves.
Yeah. And well, that's how pray.com got started for me, is because I ventured into areas that I was uncomfortable. I went to a conference for UCLA, USC entrepreneurs, and I was wearing a suit from work. So I'm in a full suit and I'm going to this conference in this group called Silicon Beach, which is basically Silicon Valley had come down to the LA area and they coined it Silicon Beach. So I'm the only one wearing a suit. I assure you, Jordan, everybody is in casual wear, because that's what you wear as an entrepreneur. You don't wear suits. But, corporate background. And I had just come, from the office. I was like, I'm going to this conference. And, that was uncomfortable. I was not an entrepreneur. So already I'm kind of a fraud in the sense of like, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I'm here to pretend like, I understand what's going on. And I just remember being, in the back of this crowd, and it was a lot of excitement in the air. And I see, some panelists up there that were USC, UCLA entrepreneurs, and they're talking about their businesses. And this one guy gets up and starts talking about, his life as an entrepreneur. And he was a super dynamic speaker. And when you meet some of these people, you get locked in. You're like, whoa, like, nobody talks like this. Nobody has that kind of energy. Like, who is this guy? Like, what's going on? And, I ended up becoming friends with this guy because I said, I'm going to talk to this guy for this conference. I got to get to know who this guy is, because whatever he's doing, I want it. And I also knew he was a successful serial entrepreneur. So I was like, hey, I'm at Merrill Lynch still. Maybe I can get him as a client. Like, that would be nice. But he's my business partner now. And I've known him, over a decade. And it was because I had told myself I need to put myself in uncomfortable situations, that in order for me to kind of level up, I would have to go in environments that, hey, I'm probably going to stand out. I'm probably going to be the weird guy wearing the suit. I'm probably not going to be the entrepreneur, amongst the entrepreneurs. But as long as I'm honest and I tell people that, I don't try to fake it, they'll accept me and they'll be cool with me hanging out.
And that is one of the most important things, is that we need to figure out like for us, one of the best things is to really stretch and not be like, we can be ourselves, which is fine, and we should be, but we should be vulnerable. We should be there to understand that hey, this is not what I'm used to, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to learn from that. And I bet you probably weren't used to a guy coming off a stage at the conference. You can only imagine the line waiting to see him. And then you sit there and go, hi, you just shake your hand and you're like, what value can I provide this man? How can we have another conversation? Can we get coffee? And he's like, 25 people are around them. Like, you know, the situation, but like you push through and you persisted to meet him. And then these opportunities come up years later and you're like, how did this even happen?
Yeah. And some of it might be providence, which is, kind of a Christian theme in term, but, maybe it's not always in your control. You just have to put yourself in a situation that you can accept being there. And you can accept it in your brain. Things will happen. But if you don't, you'll never know.
Absolutely. And just to give the audience, so you meet the co-founder, and how long after that did Pray.com start? Was it 2 days after, or was it?
No, it was years after. At the time, he had it was basically making YouTube videos for corporations was his business. So he had a production company.
Okay.
And, when YouTube first came out, people were just throwing, user generated content on there, but then brands wanted to have like professional made content. And so he started a business out of college that was creating videos for brands, like big Fortune companies like Dodgers, Herbalife, Century 21, Coldwell Banker, like big, huge brands. And so, I just became friends with him, and partly I was still trying to work him as a client or I wanted him as a client. So, I would see him randomly in like magazines and stuff. And I would just take the magazine, I'd ship it to him. And I would just send it to him in the mail and be like, hey man, saw you in this magazine. Like, this is pretty epic. And he would call me up and he'd be like, oh, you should come out. We should hang out, blah, 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 blah. And then he became the CEO of an aerial production company in Hollywood. And they had like 15 helicopters and some fixed wing aircraft in the Van Nuys Airport. And they did all the filming for major motion pictures and television shows in Hollywood. So anything that needed an aerial shot from like a helicopter, they're the ones that were called on to do it. Now, he didn't start that company. He actually was the CEO of it, but his friend and mentor started it. And he's like, hey, you need to be the CEO of this company. Like, you're talented. This is a pretty fun thing to do. Like, let's do this together. But they did all the, motion picture movie, aerial shots like Transformers, Mission Impossible, like CSI, et cetera. They were doing that. And they also did surveillance for, 3-letter agencies like the FBI, DEA, et cetera, et cetera. And so anytime there was some surveillance missions, like they were part of that. And then they also did medical air transport. So patients and organs, hospital to hospital. So like if UCLA hospital needed to get an organ over to UCLA or USC's hospital, that's kind of what they did in part of their helicopter units. So he was doing that, and I was still at Merrill Lynch, and a tragic event happened. His business partner in that business died in a plane crash on September 11th, 2015 on a job. And it was actually in Medellin, Colombia. And so, Steve gets this call on September 11th and hears that his business partner died in a plane crash, which is like a shocking thing for anyone to get ever, no matter what age you are. But he was the CEO of the company. And so now the guy that started it and his friend and mentor died tragically, and he's got to figure out what is he going to do. Like, he has to now manage this company. He's got to manage his own personal feelings about his business partner dying. He's got to, he has a relationship with his family and friends. How is that going to change with this tragic event? And, I think if you're a millennial, one of the things that you do is you search for your own self kind of help, and you'll go online and like look for things to like help you get over a tragic event. Especially if you don't have a faith background. Having a faith background, it's a rock you can lean on. Because you're like, oh yeah, when like really tragic things happen, I grab my faith really quickly. He didn't really have that growing up. And so he just went online, started looking for, help, self-help stuff. And he started downloading like Deepak Chopra podcasts and Tony Robbins stuff, even like Oprah Super Soul Sunday. He was like, oh, I'll consume that. That'll help me get over my business partner dying. And somebody sent him a podcast from a pastor out in Texas. And initially he's just like, I'm not like a Jesus guy. Like, I'm not trying to listen to your weird podcast. I'm good. Like, I think I'll just keep listening to, Deepak Chopra. And his friend's like, wait a minute, you told me you listened to Oprah Super Soul Sunday, right? I think you can listen to this podcast. Like, it ain't going to hurt you. And so he listened to it and he was just blown away. He couldn't believe how this random pastor in Flower Mound, Texas, was actually helping him get over his business partner dying. He felt legitimately like it was created for him. And he started listening to it and he's like, hey, I'm a legitimate media expert. Like, that's what he did for a living. I didn't even know that this faith-based content existed. Like, there's this whole category of faith-based content. He didn't even know it existed. And so he said, there should be a place for all this stuff. And that's when Steve and I got together randomly because I wanted to check in with him. And I had called him up, and this is the summer of 2016. And his business partner, by the way, had died at the end of 2015. And so he tells me, we get together, we're grabbing some pizza up in Westlake Village. And he says, hey man, I'm going to start this company called pray.com, the digital destination for faith. And when he said that to me, I was like, wait a minute, did you just say pray.com? Like, I don't even believe you that you have this domain name. That's crazy. Like, you had that domain name? That's wild. And the next thing he said, well, the digital destination for faith. Well, I'm Catholic. It actually means something to me. And so when he said that, I said, wait a minute, you have pray.com. You want to make it the digital destination for faith. Let's start talking. And that night, we started going over all the ways that we were going to make pray.com the digital destination for faith. So we're coming up with all these crazy ideas. And I told him before we left that night, we have to close down this pizza shop. I said, listen, I'm going to leave my 13-year career, all my clients, all my licenses, all my designations, everything I built my entire life. And I'm going to help you build pray.com because I truly believed we could have a global impact. So that's how pray.com got started. And that's my journey, from Green Bay to Pray.
It's incredible. And everyone has that pray.com experience where it's, what'd you say? How does that work? Is this real? So for you, how's that experience been? Because it's absolutely incredible that in that spur moment, you were like, I'm going to give up everything. But I feel like in reality, that was what you were looking for, no?
Yeah. There's a really interesting quote by Bill Burr. And I'll have, you guys can look it up. You can look it up if you're listening to this. But he talks about risk. And he said, you know what risk really is? And don't quote me on this, but you should look it up. He said, people think that risk is just starting a new life. But the reality, sitting at home in your house, in your bed, with a wife you don't like and kids you hate and a job you don't want to go to is actually more risky than being in your 30s and sleeping on a futon, right? And having an opportunity to do what you want. And I don't know if you have the quote, but
I got it.
And
I got it. He goes,
you should read it. Yeah, read it.
He goes, realize that sleeping on a futon when you're 30 is not the worst thing. You know what's worse? Sleeping in a king bed next to a wife you're not really in love with, but for some reason you married and you got a couple kids and you got a job you hate, and you'll be laying there fantasizing about sleeping on a futon. There's no risk when you go after a dream. There's a tremendous amount of risk by playing it safe. Yeah, it's profound.
Just read that. If you read that, and thank you for looking it up because I butchered it, but thank you for finding it. You go, well, what real risks did I take that I wouldn't be able to go back to Merrill Lynch if things really got bad, like I already had that knowledge. That's not really a concern. Maybe I'd have to go get my clients back and all this stuff. But the real risk is being unhappy. That's the risk. You only have one life. You want to be unhappy your entire life? You already know if you're unhappy, by the way. You know. I don't have, it's something you know inherently if you're unhappy or not. And your choice is, do you want to sit and be unhappy because things are comfortable, which is what, Bill Burr is trying to say. And it's like, it's actually riskier to sit there and be uncomfortable and be unhappy. Why don't you actually do something that will make you happy? Because if you're right, then you're going to be happy. And if you're wrong, you're already unhappy anyway. So who cares? So that was my mindset about jumping over to pray was, hey, what if it does work out? And if it doesn't, hey, I have this knowledge from 13 years, I'll be fine. And at the time I didn't, I'm still not married, but I'm engaged, but I didn't have, wife and kids, but I'm sure how that could be a much more, difficult decision, but it was a much easier decision for me. I knew that I had to do this. And that's why, I moved to LA from Green Bay, was to find an opportunity that made sense. And I knew right away when it was there, I was like, this is it. This is the guy I would leave my career for. That's the other part, another component is this is a serial entrepreneur that's done it before. So he has some inherent knowledge of how to start businesses. And this is an idea I'm passionate about personally. And it's something I've always wanted to do. What is the real risk? So that was an exciting moment. Now, when we actually got started, there was a lot that went down. And, if you've ever seen the Silicon Valley show on HBO, that was our life. Everything that happened on the show, I don't know if it happened to us. All the crazy stuff that show happened to us. Now, I don't know if it's that crazy anymore. It's not, the tech industry is not that wild, but we went through all those things. We went up to Silicon Valley. We raised some money. There was a lot of characters. We did some incredible things. Like we worked with the White House. We went to the Vatican. Like we worked with celebrities. All those things are real things. And when you first start a company, you're just hoping that somebody will love your idea. That's all you want. You just want someone to love your idea so that you can at least get it started. Because if you don't have the money to get started, you can't get off the ground.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love the way you explained it, where it's okay to go with someone's idea. It's okay to build the team and be part of the team. And that's important. And I love your mindset on, I can always go back. You can always go back. And like, when you look forward, you're like, wow, did my life really just start right now? It's a cool moment. It's an incredible thing. And it's awesome. But for you, so what has pray.com become? What has it reached? How are people, what's your favorite part of it?
Yeah. I didn't know the impact we would have when I first started Pray. I had no idea, where it could go. And so the most satisfying thing about starting a company, especially one that interacts with consumers on an individual basis, is that you get feedback from them. You get direct feedback. If people like your product, if people hate your product, all you got to do is go in the Apple and Google review stores and look at the reviews, and you'll find out if people like or hate your product. And I can't change those. People say what they're going to say. And what's incredible is the amount of people that love our product. And, I never thought I'd build a company where people would say it saved their life. It's not something I'd ever think that would happen, that I would save someone's life or got them through a difficult time. And to know that I was able to do that with people I will never meet. Like, we've had 14 million people download the app. Many, many more people have interacted with our content on other platforms. But reading some of the reviews have been some of the most incredible things that have absolutely changed my life permanently. And, saying that people were going to kill themselves. Like we have a review that always comes to mind for me of a police officer in Cleveland, Ohio, who had wrote into us who said that they got done with their shift and they were going to kill themselves. And they got a text message from somebody that sent them our app, and they downloaded it, and they got access to our content. And he wrote back in to tell us that it saved his life. And, I will never meet this person unless for some reason they reach out to me or want to, reach out to me to say, hey, I was that guy. But, there's many stories where they're just really incredibly impactful, of a woman who's in her hospital bed with stage 4 cancer, writing her review of pray.com and how she just received it. And she's just so grateful to get our daily devotional every morning. And she wanted to tell us, like, every morning I get your daily devotional. I'm so lucky that I get one more day to get this before I meet the person that said it. And you're just like, whoa, what did you just say to me? Like, who says that? Like, that's an incredible thing to hear. So that's by far been the most incredible thing, where your content really is saving people's lives. And, if you believe in our content in terms of the faith component, like, I'm Christian. So if you believe in it, it does save people's eternities, right? We're faith-based content. Our content is a salvation type content. We can literally change the path of your eternity if you listen to our content. And so knowing that we're literally changing the eternity of people, name another business that does that. Like, pretty incredible thing to say. And when we tell people that, are coming onto pray.com before they start their first day, we're like, hey, you don't have to be Christian to work here. You don't have to be. As long as you believe in the power of prayer, that's an important component of working at pray.com. But if you believe in faith and you believe in this content, you're going to save people's lives and you're going to save their eternity. And it blows people away because they don't really think about that. But that's actually what happens.
Yeah, profound. And the story was giving me chills. And the most wild thing is, because when you think about those situations where, like, you saved my life, or you hear something along those lines, it's usually, from my experience, and I've interviewed a lot of different people, I've met a lot of different people, it's usually some sort of a friend comes to them, it's a coaching environment, it maybe a piece of content, but usually one of those two where it's an in-person experience. What you're saying is something in such a positive light, and it's on your phone and it's content. And the thing is that when you scroll social media like Instagram, TikTok, any of these, there's a lot of negativity on there, and there's a lot of bad actors and negative things, because when we listen to those, it puts us in a negative state. So I think it's very valuable if anyone's having some sort of questions or issues, or just interested in learning. I mean, I'd highly recommend checking out pray.com, just because it's a positive outlook, and it can change your mindset. And like, it's just very, very interesting.
And the pandemic is over, despite what may happen, what the government says it's over. But there is a hidden pandemic, and it is raging, and it's a mental health pandemic. And it is happening right now. The mental health of not just America, but the world is suffering. And people need an outlet. Social media is not a great outlet. To your point, Jordan, social media has been proven to be detrimental to your mental health. Not a positive thing, detrimental. And so having a platform where people can actually feel better about being on it. And here's what happens when you feel better, Jordan. You're going to be nicer to people. And you know what happens when you're nicer to people? They feel better. And when they feel better, they're going to go be nice to somebody else. So, the virality of happiness is actually what pray.com is. We want happiness. We want happiness and mental health, the positive impacts, to go viral, and getting access to our content. And by the way, our content, we have a free platform and a paid platform. You can download our app, use it for free. if you want to get some of the premium content that we have to actually pay money to produce, there is a subscription fee, but overwhelming amount of our content's free. And use it, try it out. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's okay too. But what happens if you like it is you're going to feel better. And we need more people feeling better. There's plenty of distractions to tell us you should feel bad about your life. We're not one of those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Michael. Yeah. And you even got me thinking, like, one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is for the positive world and showing that it's possible, because there's so many people sitting there, like my boss at my job, whoever, like, just talking in a situation, like someone's like, I'm not a fan of them. They don't inspire me. They're not this. And maybe they're sitting there and they're upset, and then they're listening to this podcast, and that can turn the direction of what they view life. Or they could download pray.com, because a lot of it is an inside game. This whole life is an inside game. We don't realize that enough, and we don't give ourselves enough slack / give ourselves enough positive resources to make sure we're optimizing ourselves. Like, how many of us are really working out each day? How many of us are listening to positive content? How many of us drinking a gallon of water? Like, we're not all doing these things.
Yeah.
So,
and I give you credit, Jordan, because when we talked before, I asked you, like, what are you getting out of it? How is this helping you? And you told me right away that that was the first thing you said about how you're getting to learn about people and businesses and things that, to your point, you can call it inside game. It's just insider information. It's like, we have information. How are we going to disseminate that information in the world of unlimited information that you can have access to? How is the good stuff going to come through? Because the places that you get that information right now are incentivized to have you interact with content that is very short, ephemeral, and it's just there to hit a dopamine hit in your brain very quickly. It's like, yeah, a panda, falling from a tree and landing cutely, like, that's great. That's nice. How is it actually impacting your life? And what is the secrets that you get to learn? And so, I give you a lot of credit for putting this podcast together, because you're able to extract the really interesting, positive information that can help a lot of people. And, hopefully I can provide that, and our platform in general can provide that. But it is the network. It is understanding, what are people doing that needs to be highlighted. A light needs to be shown on it, and you're making a platform that people can get access to it. So, kudos for you, man.
I appreciate that. So, Michael, where can people get pray.com? Is it only online? Is it in the app? Where can we get this?
Yeah, there's a few spots. Obviously, the name says it in the name, right? Pray.com. Go to a website, put it in. Go to the Apple, Google, download the app. Also off platform. So something that we've recently done, actually last year, was we decided that we were going to create our own podcast off of pray.com, in which people can access our content on their favorite, podcast platform. So if you're on Spotify, if you're Apple Podcasts, Google, et cetera, we said we need to get our content out there. And so we launched this podcast called Bible in a Year with Jack Graham. And it takes you through the Bible every single day, on Monday through Friday for the entire year, and it'll help you learn the Bible. And we do it in a very cinematic way. So it's not just somebody reading the Bible to you. This is voiceover actors with, professionally composed music, and, actors basically going through the script of what happens in the Bible. And it's an incredible experience. And so Jack Graham actually hosts it, and he walks you through these stories, and then we interact with the story, and you get to interact with the story, and you get to feel like, oh, wow, like, this is the Bible actually coming to life. It's not just somebody reading it. And then you get to learn, like, what did that mean? Why is this an important story of the Bible? Why does this matter? So that you can get that. It's called Bible in a Year with Jack Graham. Now, we launched this. We didn't know how well it would do. We had no clue, like, is anyone going to listen to it? Like, what's going to happen? And in Q4 of last year, which is the first quarter that we launched it, it was the initial launch of the podcast. We did over 7 million downloads. And to give you an idea, like this is like the top 1% of, podcasts that exist. Like
that is more, just to give everyone the real perspective of that. 7 million downloads. You are talking like top 0.00001%. Like 7 million down. Like that's very high on the list. That is
it blew us away, Jordan. It blew us away. We're over 10 million now. It's been 4 months, and it's just, we're blessed. We're blessed that people were able to find it, that people enjoy it. And now we're coming out with some more podcasts. So there's more podcasts that we're going to be launching, and, look for them. But that's another way to interact with Pray is, download the app, please enjoy it. We want you to enjoy it. You can also get it, in your favorite podcast app as well.
Yeah. And I'll put all of this in the show notes. And Michael, this has been awesome. Is there anything you want to leave everybody with?
One thing I would say is try to be inspirational as much as you can to people that are close to you in your life. Telling somebody you're proud of them is something that will change their life, because most people don't hear praise. So if you can be inspirational to people that are close to you and just tell them you're proud of something that they've done that's legitimately incredible, right? Like, tell them that. They're not going to forget it. So that would be one thing I would say is today, tell one person that, hey man, like, I'm proud that you did this and you've done an incredible job. They will not forget that you said that to them, for sure.
Yeah. And this is, I love that activity. And you should do this with people that you can call a friend. You can tell someone you're going to see tonight. You can call your girlfriend. You can call your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, anyone. Because let's be honest, the people that we see the most often, we can sometimes be huge critics and we can be difficult and we might not always appreciate them. So if you could take that one moment and go, I appreciate this and you're doing great and I'm really proud of you. Yeah, it'll change your whole night, and it's a very little gesture for you and it will make them feel incredible. Which is all we're trying to do here. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there, and have a great day and keep clocking in.